what inspired you guys to start your podcast?
Yeah, well, we talked a while back. I had this idea of tackling cultural issues from a psychological and theological perspective.
Hmm.
And because they often were seen as not compatible or not being able to work with each other.
Yeah.
So I'm a licensed professional counselor. So I wanted to take care of that piece, but I need a theology guy. And a lot of people recommended Tim to me, and we had never met.
Oh, really?
So him and I linked up and we talked over some coffee, gave it some thought, prayed about it, and here we are, Psych and Theo.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I love that concept. I mean, yeah, those are two things that I've always been pretty obsessed with. Like, I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan, so that's like, psychology, and he gets into a lot of religious stuff as well. So yeah, that's a good combination. But yeah, it's sort of like the age old science versus God type thing, right? So how do you guys, like, I guess, reconcile that, or is it just like a no brainer to, like, yeah, they're compatible?
Yeah, there's some issues that we are both able to touch on, but I think we went through a couple of series or episodes where the whole episode would be focused on something theological or biblical or church oriented, and Tim would handle that. And I would ask him
Mm-hmm.
questions. And then there's others where we just do mental health,
Mm-hmm.
psychology, and then he would ask me questions. But there are some episodes where there's just a lot of overlap. We're both able to contribute to it. It's like today, even though we're talking about false teachers and false teaching, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of personality stuff that comes into that too. Like who pursues these things, who teaches those things.
Yeah.
So we'll get into a little bit about that. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So
Cool. Yeah, I've always yeah, kind of, I don't know, the whole, yeah, like science and God not mixing, like, yeah, it's something that, because I remember, I have an uncle down in Mexico who, he's a psychologist. Yeah, I think he was a therapist for a long time, and then now he's like the head of the, I don't know, psychology section at a university.
cool.
And yeah, but so he's always been, like, oh, he's a psychologist, right? He's like the smart, educated uncle. But he always used to tell me ghost stories, like supernatural things that would happen to him. And so I remember, like, in the back of my head, ever since I was a little kid, I was always like, okay, yeah, so he definitely, he believes in all that stuff. Like, he's not, like, these are personal experiences that he had, right? Like, one time he had like this like skeleton lady thing jump on top of him, and he like pushed her off, and then she disappeared. And he talks about it, like, yeah, this is something that happened. Like, I didn't make it up. He never did drugs. Yeah, it's just something that happened. But he's also a psychologist, so it's kind of like, how do you reconcile those things? But it is
Yeah, in
what it
fact,
is.
we just did an episode last night with another podcast asking us some of those questions. Where did the bifurcation happen between psychology and theology, or mind and spirit, you might say? So we went into that a little bit. And as far as the Enlightenment and how the sciences took
Mm-hmm.
off in one direction with rationalism and empiricism, and a lot of authority got shifted into those schools of thought,
Yeah.
separated or divorced from any theological framework. But we talked about how your worldview really influences that. And by worldview, I mean your presuppositions about reality. So if someone is not open to the supernatural, like they have a worldview of atheism, materialism, naturalism,
Mm.
they uh, maybe nothing outside of some sort of supernatural encounter would convince them otherwise. Somebody might tell them, "Hey, I saw something crazy,"
Yeah.
and they might say, "Oh, well, that was the cereal you ate the night before," or something like that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you have a worldview that actually is open to those things, then you are more likely to accept testimonies of what happens. And we talked about how
Mm.
those, we need to conclude, something supernatural is occurring. You need multiple lines of evidence. There's a big gap between what you can know and what you can prove. So
Mm-hmm.
I could know something that I could never prove to you.
Yeah.
There's things that I know that I can never prove to you.
Yeah.
And same thing goes with supernatural. You could have a supernatural experience where you're like, yeah, I know that was real, that wasn't fake, but be hard for me to prove that to you. you know.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where you have multiple lines of evidence where two or more people experience the same thing, and the probability of that being just the pepperoni pizza, that we ate is pretty low.
Yeah, it becomes undeniable, right? It's like
Yeah.
it becomes more absurd to cling on to. No, there's a scientific explanation for it. There is no supernatural. Like it, yeah. That's kind of how I am now, like with my faith. Even though, like, I may have still doubts and question things, but like I know I could never go back to being an atheist, because that to me is just like it's just too absurd. I mean, like I was raised Catholic, and now I'm back as a practicing Catholic. But for a long time, yeah, I was an atheist, or like agnostic, like, oh, who knows, maybe there is a God out there somewhere, but he doesn't care about us. He just created us and left us, alone, kind of thing. But anyways, yeah, I can't go back to that whole atheist denial thing, because to me it's just more absurd. Like I'd rather be a crazy religious nut than deny it, because to me there's just no way. Like, yeah, how are we here? We didn't just come out of nothing, and like a series of accidents. I guess that's one thing too that I kind of still have an issue with, like with evolution, even though there's like obviously very compelling arguments for it, but I'm just like, there's no way that like these things that you see, like certain birds or whatever, like that they develop, like, oh, this bird, it evolved to look like, it has eyes on its wings and it scares off predators. Like that didn't happen by accident. Come on. Like that's just more absurd that, oh, it was just a series of accidents, and, they kept reproducing until, you have that final product. Like, I don't know, to me, that just, it's bizarre.
How long were you in that space for, Ricardo, being like atheist?
Being an atheist. Man, I don't know. I think it started pretty early on. I would say maybe like around 15 years, something. I don't know.
So
like maybe
yeah.
What's that?
I said, wow, so you were a teenager when it started happening.
Well, I think, I don't know, because I think I had my first communion and confirmation when I was like 8 years old. And I was already like, I had heavy doubts already at that point. And
really?
Yeah. And then, as a teenager, that's when I entered that whole edgy teenager kind of stage of life. And I was like, there's no God. And so, that happened like around, like 12, 13 years old. And over time, I kind of, it's more like I lost that passion for the atheist thing. Like I just kind of didn't care anymore. Like, regardless if there is a God or not, like I don't really care. And then, when I was like in my early 20s, I had some experiences that, like what we're saying, like something you live through that you can't really deny. And then ever since then, since my early 20s, just like having more and more interest and openness to it. And now I'm 32, and it was last December of 2023 that I started going back to the Catholic Church. So I must have been 31.
Wow.
So kind of a long journey, I guess. But so you guys, you both work at a university, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Sam, are you like the head of the psychology, or what exactly is your position?
No, I wish. No, actually, I'm a counselor there for our students. So we work in a counseling department. So I counsel students. I run a couple of groups, do some psychoeducation stuff. But so that's kind of my role. I teach some psychology courses as well.
Oh, okay, nice.
So that's kind of my role. Tim is also a teacher. Tim, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, I'm an adjunct professor in the College of Arts and Sciences philosophy department. Mostly teach ethics or introductory ethics. Sometimes I'll teach in School of Divinity. So I teach theology and philosophy topics. And then I also work in the administrative side in a division called the Office of Spiritual Development. So we do all things spiritual life on campus.
Nice.
So I work there, and I mainly train students on how to travel and be good travelers overseas, cultural intelligence, both with world religions and with cultural customs and taboos and things like that. So
Oh,
I
sweet.
do a lot of traveling for my job.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place you've been to?
Oh man, I love Turkey.
Okay.
Turkey's just it's a great place. I don't know if I'd live there, but I do love visiting there. Costa Rica as well. Costa Rica.